Good morning. I'm Dr. Barry. I'm a licensed psychologist, and here we talk about psychology and crime. And today we are talking about a very difficult case. There are trigger warnings for child SA, and this case had so many twists and turns. We are going to take a look at some of the defendant's testimony from yesterday. It's my understanding that the Court TV's coverage starts around 11 a.m. So we may join the live coverage. We got snow in Virginia, so we can thank Mother Nature for why I'm able to stream with you all. I do have to stop about 1:30 p.m. I might also have to take a little lunch break. So I might be able to play some of the live feed while I just go and grab some food from downstairs real quick. Thank you to all the psych nerds that asked for me to cover this case. I totally understand why you all wanted this to be broken down a little bit more. This case is incredibly sad, and it reminds me of a case out of Virginia, and I wanna talk about some of the differences between some of these cases. And so Marissa asked a really great question, and before I get to some of these questions, let's start with a history of this case. So this case is out of South Carolina, and Zachary Hughes is charged with the capital M and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime and the death of Christina Parcell. And after her death, it's my understanding that it did come out that there's evidence that she was harming her daughter. And he's going to say on the stand that he did this to protect their daughter. I have links down below. If you have not seen coverage from Lawyer Lee and then also Courtroom Confidential last night had Recovery Addict on, and the two of them they talked about this case. It was phenomenal because on Court Confidential, he broke down how in the protecting another, it has to be kind of in the act. Like, you have to kind of walk in on harm happening, and then it can't be about vague future harm, because Zachary Hughes is going to admit to lying to CPS, saying that he was a neighbor that had witnessed harm, and that wasn't true because he was hoping that the child would be interviewed by someone. And it's just I'm gonna try to stay because my brain is jumping all over the place because I'm also trying to unravel all of this and figure this out. At the time of his arrest, Hughes is a Juilliard trained pianist with no criminal history. Investigators linked Hughes through his friend John Mello, and John Mello was arrested yesterday due to Hughes saying that John Mello, the father of Christina's child, that John Mello had offered him money to get rid of his wife. And Zachary Hughes is going to have this right, like, oh no, I would never do this for money. Like, this was not the reason why I did it. I did not do this for money, but he is going to say that he did it to try to protect the child. And there's this righteous, there's this feel I get unsettled when I hear him testify. Y'all let me know in the chat how y'all feel as you listen to him, because he is so convinced that he is right. And Recovery Addict talked about the fact that his testimony came across credible, but it came across a little, for me personally, I do not know him. I cannot speak about his mental health. To me, it came across a little psychopathic, like antisocial, against social norms. Like, it came across like this vigilante, and somebody in the comments said a non-righteous vigilante, which is somebody that takes matters into their own hands. And you do face criminal charges and possible jail time when someone does this. He was also very defiant to me on the stand because the judge was clear that the past allegations of SA should not come. The jury cannot hear that. But he repeatedly said it. And at one point, he even said the court or the prosecution doesn't want you to hear, doesn't want you to know this. And it's my understanding from people that are covering this case that the jury was shocked when he admitted to doing the crime. Her DNA was found. I'm sorry, his DNA was found under her fingernails, and like this case just has so many twists and turns. Prosecutors say they found almost 2,000 WhatsApp messages sent between Hughes and Mello, including one where Mello asked the defendant to harass her. So John Mello asked Hughes to harass her, and that's when he started sending out pictures. And he's going to say that she was an escort, and he's really going to drag the victims. And now the victim is not a she did some things and there should have been consequences. My concern with this case is that the child involved, so the child that was a victim, is now also having to cope with the death of her mother as well, which can be incredibly hard for a child. And it's like he got to choose what was best in this situation. And what if John was lying? So he had never met Christina. He had no interactions with her, but based on his relationship with his adoptive sister. And so we are going to play a little bit of that testimony. But him talking about his adoptive sister and his experience with her, and he's going to describe her in a certain way. He thought that he was the only one that could save the child from this. And it's just, oh, this is a very, very twisted case. This is also called the rose petal capital M case. And okay. So the question is, do I think the judge should have let the alleged SA in? And I think it would have been different if he had caught her in the act, if he had found images of the harm. Like, this was all just based on her ex-husband's report. And so I think that's why the judge did not allow that information in. The judge did allow him to talk about his adoptive sister and his experiences with her and different lawyers. And y'all know I'm not a lawyer, so yes, different people will have different opinions on that. Hello from the Netherlands, welcome, welcome. And I think he feels, because he's going to say that he prayed about it. And he prayed before, he prayed after. And that's where I think sometimes people can use their faith in a way that hurts, because a lot of people were in the comments like, wait a minute, isn't one of the 10 commandments, thou shalt not kill? Or like why did he get to take this into his own hands and brutally harm her? And so welcome, welcome. I know Recovery Addict is likely going to be covering this today too. So he is not claiming a mental health condition. So what he's saying he was justified in what he did. So this isn't a delusion. So there is no mental health condition that he's claiming. And mental health treatment, because he feels he was justified in what he did. So my understanding of all of this, it would not be a mental health condition. He's not saying I didn't know it was wrong, because he's going to say that he used paint thinner on her hands to try to get rid of evidence. And he knew it was wrong, and he's gonna say that when he did it, like, he was like, "If I got caught, I was going to accept responsibility." But he's pleading not guilty, and I don't know that he wants to go to jail, but I think he feels justified in what he did, and it's just, oh, and we can talk about non-bizarre delusions, and so was it a delusion for him to think that he was the only one that could save this child? It reminds me of this, like, a savior complex, or so he wanted to be a Marine, and, so I think he wanted to serve and protect. He had this phenomenal history. He has all of these, he's done all of these, concerts and all of these things. He actually did the crime because he was about to go out of town. So, like, the reason why, it's like, so why did you do it that day? It's like, oh, I was about to go on, I got a job, I think on a cruise ship, or I don't know. Like, he got a job and he was about to go out of town. And so that's why he did it. And, like, this case is just, and so I totally get why you all wanted to talk about it. And then so B Michigan says maybe a religious vigilante, and I could totally see that, especially with him talking about like praying about it and almost like asking God, should I do this? And feeling like he got the answer yes. And so, welcome, Chop Trials. Thank you for being a member for 4 months. I appreciate you all. And then Kaylee says, the child was not in imminent danger. Now, the one thing I will say is it sounds like nobody was aware of, so I think the dad suspected something was going on. I think there was a guardian ad litem involved. So based on my watching, Lawyer Lee talked about how the guardian ad litem seemed to be on mom's side, and it looked like mom was going to get more custody and dad was going to lose some of his custody. Now, I think they could have court ordered some type of treatment. Now, and y'all know, so I do not believe that he shows signs of autism. I personally feel like it's more psychopathic. And somebody in the comments on one of the channels I was watching, he does not seem to. Now, I don't know his diagnosis. He could be on the autism spectrum, but sometimes when people are cold and unfeeling, or when they present in a certain way, people start thinking, could they be on the autism spectrum? I don't see signs of that personally. And he admitted to planning it out, and to it being premeditated. He admitted all of that. All right. I'm getting caught up on the chat. Let me know if y'all have questions. If y'all have questions, please try to put some question marks at the beginning. It makes it easier for me to see it. So the part that does not make this a psychosis for me, this isn't psychosis, because the child was in harm's way, but he seemed to think he was the only person that could save the child. And I think that was just a strong belief. Uh, Now, he would have to be assessed, but he's not claiming mental health. And also, remember, somebody can have psychosis and still be criminally responsible for their crime. And then, once again, member for 4 months. Don't do crimes. Just don't do crimes. I think the child could have been referred for an assessment. So the child was young. I believe, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, I believe the child was 8 years old when he did this crime. And I'm glad that they are keeping her out of this, because also, if what happened to her became the center of this case, she could potentially be called as a witness, and then also she might feel responsible for her mom's death. and she didn't do anything wrong. She's the innocent child in the midst of all this. And so I believe John Mello and him are just friends. Like it was just a friend's ex-wife. Like that's who Christina was to him, a friend's ex-wife. And so this whole thing is just, ooh. But let's start with him talking about his adoptive sister, Grace. And I had some thoughts as he was talking about some of this, and I want to break some of this down. And so I'll turn closed captions on. Um, he is going to use, yeah. So we're just going to play this from here.
You were telling this jury about your oldest sister, Grace.
Yes. Thank you. I don't say this lightly, but my oldest sister, Grace, was the most evil human being I've ever met in my life. She was 10 when she came into our family. The Russian government didn't tell us much about the kids, so we weren't aware of any, if any, behavioral issues there may have been.
And so it's my understanding that his parents adopted 5 children, and Grace was one of them, and they were all adopted from Russia. And the thing that I will tell you is that Russian orphanages are known, like a lot of our research on reactive attachment disorder comes out of what we know happens in Russian orphanages. So there will be a room with like 30. Okay. And so this isn't true of every single situation. Cases I've worked with, this is how the children were raised. There would be a room with 20 to 50 babies lined up in a row, and the babies do not cry because the babies learn that you're just going to get fed on a schedule. You don't get fed when you're hungry. You are fed when it's time, because they start at row 1 and they just feed the babies row to row. If you're wet, you're changed at changing time. And the babies spend most of their time in that bed by themselves, and there's not a lot of nurturance. There's not a lot of holding, talking to, singing. Now, this is how things were years ago. I do not know how things are today, but that is the history of Russian orphanages. And the babies, so our diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder, let me pull up the DSM, reactive attachment disorder. And y'all know I am an adoption competent therapist. RAD, or reactive attachment disorder, is a rare mental health condition that affects children, their ability to form healthy attachments with others, specifically their caregivers. And it always is the result of severe neglect and harm and inconsistent caregiving in early childhood. And what it can cause the children to do is have difficulty forming attachments with caregivers, withdrawal, and engage in avoidance and social interactions, lack emotional responsiveness. There can be irritability and aggression, difficulty regulating emotions, inhibited, or so like they might either be underreactive or overreactive. And one of the DSM criteria is that there can be this lack of remorse or guilt. It's typically diagnosed. It can be diagnosed as in early childhood, and there are treatments that can be effective with this. And if I was working with a family that was looking at adopting 5 children from Russia, I would be like, "N like, adopt one at a time." Like, don't bring 5 children all together. And I don't know the logistics of if they adopted all 5 children at the exact same time, but if they did, because, some of those children might do better in a smaller environment. So, a child like Grace might do better in a home that doesn't have young children. If she grew up in an orphanage where there wasn't a lot of care, there wasn't a lot of concern. And I don't know how Grace grew up, but I'm just saying that um we know that that type of severe neglect can really harm a child. And the way he's going to talk about Grace, he's going to be kind of like blaming, he's going to almost blame her for part of the reason why he recognized just how bad of a person Christine was and how he needed to step in and save things. And that's where I just personally wonder if he felt responsible, or like, so I wonder if his parents decided to adopt other children, and I believe he's his parents' birth child, and they likely come from a religious family. They likely felt like God was telling them to adopt more children. I think he despised Grace. I don't know if if I was Grace, I would not have a relationship with him. I would probably go no contact with this family, because the contempt he has for her is is absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think Grace unalived anyone. So in all the horrific things he's saying about Grace, he's the one that's on trial for murder. And okay. This part made me mad. Okay, this part made me really mad. But we're gonna listen to it.
And, and there were many, but specifically with her, I would describe her without reservation as an affectionless psychopath. It wasn't that she was immoral, it was more that she was amoral. She didn't have a sense of right and wrong.
And I'm not saying that her upbringing, because let's say she was harmful to the other children, or let's say that she did engage in some problematic behaviors, but he is not seeing this through the lens of attachment trauma. So I think he's thinking like at 10 years old. So it's hard for kids to be adopted at older ages. And younger kids sometimes have more acting out behaviors. Even if you adopt a child at birth, that child can still later have issues down the road. But it's almost like he felt she wasn't grateful to be in his family. And she's the one that was like, she was given a new name, because I think she had a different name for 10 years, and the family likely picked the name Grace. Like, so when you're adopted, you don't get to pick your name. Some families do, and I really appreciate the families that give the child a say of, would you like, like, do you want to change your name? Do you have any idea? These are the names that we would like, because sometimes in adoption, the children are treated like property. It's a whole thing, and so I'm not against adoption. I'm just against I am for centering the needs of children, and not like this child is not going to fill the needs of this family. Like this child, I think Grace might have needed a different household. I don't like, and his parents, I think, did the best they could. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not in any way, because it sounded like at some point Grace reported something like it, because he's going to be a little vague about, because him and his siblings almost ended up in care, because I think the family wanted to relinquish rights of Grace. And did they call a mistrial, or are you saying they should? Wait a minute. Y'all let me know in the chat if they did. But let's keep this going. Uh-oh, I'm gonna press play. No, did it go backwards? Oh, no. It went back. I'll have to find where I was. I okay. Alright, let's
Talk
go.
about this stuff with the same tone that you might talk about making a sandwich. And this from a girl that I knew between the ages of 10 to 14. It was incredibly disturbing. And
So I wonder if they did end up relinquishing custody of Grace, because if he only knew her from 10 to 14, I wonder I wonder if the family did relinquish parental rights. Huh.
the things I learned about that type of personality have stayed with me my entire life because I've never met someone like this since. And with one exception, I had never even heard someone describe another human being like this. Um, and one of the things that is so dangerous about someone like this is she was literally like a vampire who would just suck the goodness out of other people around her. She could be very emotional and she would fake these emotions in order to elicit.
I can't believe the judge allowed all of this because this man, Gr Grace is not on trial here, okay? Grace is not the one that's on trial. And yes, I do feel like he is projecting his resentment and what he wasn't able, because I wonder if at times he wanted to get rid of Grace. Like, this is just so weird. And he is not a mental health expert in because like the way that he's describing Grace, I hear reactive attachment disorder. She was 10 years old. Okay? Like she was 10. She was 10 years old. Now, I have worked with some adoptees that have there have been safety concerns with younger children. There have been we've had to work on a lot. I remember one specific situation where this child needed to be in a home with no other children, and as a therapist, as the individual's therapist, I fought hard because the courts like to keep families together, but this child hated other children like that were in the home and really needed to be in a home just by themselves with no other children, because anytime there was attention given to another child, it would really disrupt this child's attachment. So in order to heal, it was in the best interest of this child to not be adopted with their siblings, and to be adopted in a different situation. But like the way that he's talking about her, it just feels and then some people are saying that this feels a lot like a documentary that people have watched. I felt a lot of his testimony did seem calculated and rehearsed, and this is the story that I think he desperately wanted the jury to hear. That's how I feel with this. Oh, we're gonna suffer through a little more. We're gonna keep it going.
A response in you, a sympathetic response. And if, for instance, you were accusing her of doing something like stealing or hurting one of her siblings, she would weep and just beg you to believe her and say, no, no, I didn't do it. And then if you would present her with irrefutable proof that we knew you had indeed done this.
And lying, stealing, hoarding food is really common in reactive attachment disorder. Okay. So everything he's describing are things that I've heard about reactive attachment disorder. This was quite some time ago. I don't know if there was I've been practicing since 2005. I don't know how old he is, but we've known about. I think a lot of our things have gotten better towards reactive attachment disorder, but the Natalia Grace. So I did a video on that. I think it got taken down because I used somebody did a copyright claim for one of the pictures that I used, and I just got mad and just deleted the video. But because I guess somebody owned the copyright to one of the pictures I showed. um but with that case, I do think her adoptive parents, I think there were issues with them. And then with that new family that she was with that then tried to disown her, like her story is just it has so many twists and turns and ups and downs. So yes, yes, yes. All right. Oh. Um, yeah, and there can be a lot of trauma for kiddos that grow up in food scarce homes. All right. And so let's keep we're gonna let him because when he's talking, you're almost like, is he talking about like why is he talking about Grace?
It was like a mask would just fall off her face. And I mean, she'd just look at you with shark eyes. And no matter how many times we would go through this cycle with her, where
And remember, he was her brother because he's talking almost like he's her parent, but like he was her brother. And I don't know how old he was during all of this, but he was he was her brother. And I agree when you adopt from another country, if you do an transracial adoption, you should make sure to expose that child to their native culture. That is really important. She was a child. He was about 13. Okay. Um, but, like, his eyes look kinda dead to me. So he's over here talking about so that's like, he's over here talking about Grace not being unemotional, and talking about horrific things like she's talking about making a sandwich, and I feel like he's doing the same thing. But and I f and I don't know if the parents did some of the parentification because it just seems like he resented her, and I wonder how he felt about the family bringing in 5 children. 5 children. The atrocities of foreign orphanages is, unimaginable. Um, uh, you adopted a toddler with CP. Um, yes. Wow. Yeah. And so, yeah. He is now 33, but from what I've read, his parents relied on him to parent the young, which is so, uh I can't scream this loud enough. Do not have a 13-year-old responsible for adoptive children. I do not think you should do that. Um, so there was a question of changing adoptive children's names. So I have worked with clients that were old enough to want a name change. So I've worked with clients that it was almost like they wanted to get because they had trauma that they remembered that happened with that other name, and hearing that name was triggering for them, and they wanted a new name. I've also worked with kids adopted at 15 or 16, and they wanted to keep their full name. They didn't want their adoptive parents' last name. They had grown up all their life with this name, and they wanted to keep their name. And so I think it should be a conversation with the child. I like doing it as the therapist, so as the neutral person, because when the parent asks, you know, do you want, do you want our last name? Or, like, we'd really love to name you after Uncle say, Uncle Joseph, don't you want the name Joseph? If the parents are asking the question, the child can sometimes want to please the parent. And so with pre-adoption therapy, that's a service that I do. I work with families before adoption, during, and after. And with the pre-adoption work, I work with the child to see what the child wants, and I advocate for the child. But guess what? It's up to the parent. So if I recommend to the parent, I think the child should have a choice. They don't want to change their name. I've worked with kids that didn't want to be adopted. They wanted to stay in foster care. They felt safer in foster care than being adopted, but they were under the age of 12, and it wasn't up to them. There was an adoptive parent that wanted them. Their goal was adoption, and that child had to be adopted, which is just it's a lot. So, And so he has no empathy for what Grace may have experienced, because she may have experienced some significant trauma, additional besides neglect, because sometimes there can be the kids get into fights, or because there and like she could have experienced a lot. I don't know if she grew up in that orphanage, if her parents relinquished custody later. I don't know her story, but all right. We are going to listen to him a little bit more. I know. Let's go.
She would deceive us and betray our trust and hurt people in our family. She would always reel us back in, because there's something in normal, good people that wants to believe that someone like this can change. You want to believe that, there's redemption for someone like this and that they might change their ways and become a better person. And she knew that. And she would use that in order to ingratiate herself again and regain our trust, only to betray that trust again harder than she had the first time. And this happened dozens of times, and it created an incredible amount of strife in our home. She could
And I think he resents Grace for that. But what? Okay. Okay.
manipulate my parents and drive a wedge between them.
And the parents allowed that to happen. So that's where um okay.
She was just an incredibly intelligent person and incredibly evil. And having met someone like that, it made me able to understand, and even though I didn't want to, accept the fact that people like this exist, whether you want to believe it or not.
And I think he may think people like this, I wonder if he thinks they don't deserve to be on the planet with the rest of us, because I haven't heard that Grace unalived anyone, or that I don't like. It's just this is hard.
And if you trust them, you are only ever going to get hurt by them again. You have to forgive them at some point. And that was a very difficult thing for me to do. It took me years, but eventually I had to accept an apology from this girl that I never got and was never going to get. And I had to do it for myself. But I would never trust her again. And that would be insane, for my own safety or for the safety of others. So this is an experience which I think is somewhat unique. I think most people have not met someone like this.
But this is where I feel like he's trying to use this as a justification, and as like he had this specialized knowledge, and now it's going to be his responsibility to make everything right. And I think he expected an apology for her ruining his family, but she was the child that was brought into the family, and I think she struggled with it. She struggled with attaching to these new parents. I and now and I don't say that to, because let's say she was physically aggressive towards children, or let's say she was doing things that were not okay. That's where the adults should have made sure that she had the help and support she needed. Grace probably changed her name like when she turned 18. Grace probably and I don't know, because it sounds like something happened at 14. So I don't know where Grace is, but I wish her all the best. I hope everything's okay. Um, like she and I've worked with some Russian adoptees that have missed their home country. They come with like an accent, and they would get teased and bullied at school. They often were taught English, but sometimes it can be a big culture shock. And I don't hear any empathy for Grace, but okay.
I mean, we might watch true crime documentaries or things like this, and we know that technically these people are real, but they exist on Netflix or in someone else's lives, and we never once believe that it could be someone we know, or that it could be someone living next door, or that it could be someone that our children play with, or someone we might allow to look after our kids. So knowing this is essential to understanding my reaction to what John began to tell me about Christina Parcell in April and May of 2021 after Aida had been taken back to Greenville.
And so the incident happened in October. So he finds this out in April and May. Okay. So he finds this out in April and May. And then he is about to go out of town and decides to take matters into his own hands in October. And all right. Reactive attachment disorder in adulthood, it can turn into, it depends on if it gets treated. So reactive attachment disorder can be treated. I've worked with, but really it's the adoptive parents having a different style, because you can't use punitive parenting. You can't, there's an approach, and I've talked about it in some of my other videos about adoption. It's called trust-based relational intervention. You have to build trust with this child first. Grace probably didn't feel safe. She probably felt on edge a lot. And one of the biggest things you have to do is build some felt safety. Grace was 10 years old. She probably wanted some control. And there's another child telling her what to do. She's probably looking at him like, you're a kid like me. You can't tell me what to do. So I would never recommend a 13-year-old supervise and help parent a 10-year-old adopted child. Like, no, that's not appropriate at all. And my own personal thoughts. My own personal thoughts. Oh my gosh. All right. So where I will find the link for that video and put it in the comments. All right. Let's keep it going. I talked about it with the Timothy Farrington case. Farrington, I believe that was the name. All right, so let's go.
He started describing Christina Parcell's character and her personality. And as he was going through various points, he kept saying, Zach, I know you're not going to believe me. Like, I know this sounds overblown and dramatic, and you probably think I'm exaggerating. And under other circumstances, I would have, because John he's a big storyteller. And, when people are talking about their exes, like, everyone thinks their ex is the Antichrist. So, of course, I was sort of predisposed to be biased against what he was telling me, except for the fact that point by point, everything he described about Christina Parcell was exactly the same as my sister Grace. He told me that Christina Parcell was a master manipulator. He said she can lie at the drop of the hat and you'll never know it. He said she was incredibly charming. He said she was incredibly intelligent and talented. He used to say she was smarter than he was, but that her biggest fault was that she was lazy. And she had this arrogance combined with her laziness that was essentially born out of the fact that she knew she never really had to work too hard at anything in life. And she could even sacrifice trust. I can't believe the judge let some of this stuff in, but and I guess the prosecution is just letting him talk, because he's and the prosecution has no idea that Zachary is about to admit that he killed Christina. Like, the prosecution has no idea. Yeah, Ferreter, yeah, that one, that case. The prosecution has no idea that he's going to get on the stand and say that John offered to pay him, but he was too good for that. Like, no, I'm not going to be a hitman, but I will be a vigilante. Like, the prosecution had no idea that he was about to do that. I don't expect there to be a mistrial. We will see, because if there was another trial, I think he would do the exact same thing. And
I don't know if the defense would take a different strategy. I don't know. We're gonna and in the trigger warning for SA, he might start saying some things that, yeah.
With people and tell them lies that could easily be found out because ultimately she was completely confident in her ability to reel someone back in, no matter how bad she had burned them before. And he could have been describing Grace to me because I knew this behavior. I had lived through this behavior. So at this point,
I'm sorry. When he was describing these features to you of Christina, had you ever told him about Grace? Did he know anything about Grace?
no, I don't make a habit of talking about Grace to people. One, it's incredibly difficult to speak about, and two, most people having not met someone.
I think his attorneys knew, and I think so. These are my own personal thoughts. His attorneys probably recommended that he not admit to doing the crime, and but they needed to explain because I think his attorneys tried very hard to get the DNA evidence thrown out. Okay. So I think that if they had been able to get the DNA evidence thrown out, I think they would have said this was a conspiracy, somebody else did it. But because his DNA is under her fingernails, why? And so because of that, I think he's trying to explain all of this away. I get I get I get weird vibes from this one. And I don't know if he would meet criteria for a mental health diagnosis. This incident feels antisocial, psychopathic to me. And psychopathic or antisocial, that's against social norms. So it feels like he thought he was justified because of what she had done, what he thought that she had done. He had never met her. He had never ever met her. Like this was only based on John Mello's description. And the thing that he's the things that he's describing, I've heard, but I work a lot with high conflict divorces. And so I've heard people use language like that to describe their ex or this is so hard. All right. Like he had never ever met her. And y'all know I'm not a lawyer, so maybe somebody can do it in the chat. Your internet internet granddaughter. All right. We're gonna let him keep talking.
Someone like that, it just doesn't really land most of the time. They don't understand what you're talking about. So no, John had no idea that I'd had this experience with Grace, which made me realize that there was no way he could have possibly invented this because no one would get it right point by point by point unless they had met one of these people.
And so I think he's trying to tie Grace and Christina. These are these bad people that are beyond the law, and then he felt he needed to do something about it.
And that was the first thing that really raised a huge red flag with me and made me think that despite the fact that he can exaggerate and overblow the truth, and he's often not very believable when you listen to him.
So like, say what? So you're admitting that John can exaggerate. He cannot be believable at, and you are going to and now granted, after Christina's death, we did find out that yes, the child was being harmed. But I think in his mind, I don't think he thinks that him killing her mother, I don't think he sees that, but like that's a trauma. She went to school said goodbye to her mother. So children that are being harmed can still sometimes love that parent. And now children need to be safe, okay? And I'm not saying that's okay, but what I am saying is I'm thinking about the lifelong the rest of her life therapy this little girl is going to need because some her dad's friend took out her mother and so like what and because that little girl might be thinking, what if I had told, what if the police had gotten involved, or because she might have been asked if something was happening and the little girl might have said no. um And so I don't think he's thinking about the ripple effect of his action. I think he's just thinking, I saved this girl from any future harm, but he has done some significant harm. And now what Christina did was not okay. Okay? So like yes, she should have had a consequence for what she did. And I think this is a good time for me to flip over because I told y'all there was another case in Virginia. Was it Virginia or DC? Let me figure out where it was. Let me share this tab instead. This is the case of I might say it wrong, Shantari Weems, that she shot and killed her husband after she found out that he had essayed multiple children in her daycare. So the police were getting involved. Like she found out there was this investigation. I think he might have admitted that he did it, and I think she went to a hotel room, and so this happened back in, I want to say it was 2021. They were in Baltimore, but he was in a DC hotel room. And she was sentenced to 4 years in jail. And that situation, and the jury found her guilty. Um, and she was not able to use like protecting future children from imminent harm. That defense was not able to be used. Instead, she was found guilty by a jury, sentenced to 4 years. But like this, I think the jury could understand this was her husband and the betrayal that she felt. While I don't think her actions were justified, you can kind of like, because she said, I snapped. Like she was like, I snapped. He hurt my babies, and she went and he's not here anymore. Um, there was also um, a recent case where an elderly white man, I think he was in his 80s or something, but a black boy he was trying to find, his mom asked him to drive to pick up his brother, and the black boy knocked on the wrong door. And this elderly white man opened the door and shot and killed the boy. And that man, he pled guilty to the crime, and he recently died. I don't think he was sentenced. I think he just pled guilty, and he's since died. I will share that case as well. Elderly man died, killed. um, Let me see. Yes. The boy's name was Ralph Yarl. No, yeah, I believe his name was Ralph Yarl. And it was an 86-year-old Missouri man. He died after pleading guilty to a lesser charge in the 2023 shooting of Ralph Yarl. And I'll just share his beautiful picture. He was scheduled to be sentenced on March 7th, but a 16-year-old was shot and killed for knocking on the wrong door. Um, the man thought he was being robbed, and he wasn't. And so that's why I don't believe in vigilante justice. So I accept insurance, but I am not a fan of insurance companies. Not at all. I'm currently going through it with TRICARE. Um, I have not been paid in 2025 for a single TRICARE claim. And I'm gonna, because I think I have to call, and I might have an ability to get an advance because I've submitted over. I think I've submitted over 20 claims. I think I have an additional 10 to 15 claims to submit. But TRICARE switched to a new processing company. Did he survive? I thought he died. Oh, whoops. Okay, sorry. Okay, whew. Because I know he was shot in the head. So did he survive? Oh, okay, sorry. I'm glad he survived. Sorry, my bad. I thought because there was another situation, similar situation where the boy died. So I'm thank y'all. The chat is amazing. Okay, chat is amazing. Uh okay, good. Um yes. And I'm glad that there was some justice before the gentleman that shot him. I'm glad that he was found guilty. Because there was another case very similar where the young man did not survive. So yes. Thank you, Lisa. Yes, because there was another case where the young man did exact same situation, knocked on the wrong door, and the young man did not survive. All right. Hi. We are gonna dive back into this. And we are going to catch up with live coverage. I believe it starts around 11. But because he's going to try to justify what he did. I think he feels justified in what that's the story that he's presenting to the jury. And it reminds me of cases where the person, he doesn't want to look like a bad person. I'll say that again. I think he's concerned with his image and how he comes across, and I don't think he wants to be viewed as like a bad person, because I think he views himself on this moral, like he's up on this moral level where it's like, oh, I'd only do this to save a child. And it's like, but wait a minute, you know. And he admitted to lying to CPS to try to get CPS involved. The father was the one that I think could have said some things, but I don't, it's this is a horrific case. Just so sad. All right, we're gonna listen to him say some more stuff. Trigger warnings for SA. He is going to let some stuff slip eventually.
I was convinced at that point that he must be describing something true, because no one would know how to describe it so specifically and accurately if they were just making it up. And I was right to believe him.
And I think he feels that he was right. I think he feels he was justified. He had the right. And I don't want to live in a country where like somebody just gets to decide if what's right and what's wrong. I don't think that's okay. I don't want just anybody to get to decide that.
So, in addition to this description of her character, and one last thing about Grace and Christina by.
And once again, for anybody, so to me, this felt like transference where his feelings about Grace kind of transferred onto Christina, because Christina probably didn't meet criteria for reactive attachment disorder. Now, she might have had some narcissistic or antisocial, or I don't know, like there might have been some personality features. I don't know her. I don't know what was going on. She might have been extremely manipulative. It sounds like she was an unsafe person for her daughter, but I don't think that requires a death sentence. And just my own thoughts.
Correlation. One thing Grace she had an addiction to doing was not merely stealing from you or sucker punching one of her siblings just to assert dominance or doing other terrible things to her siblings, she would recruit her other younger siblings to do these things for her. She would get off on making
Grace was kind of smart. And I've worked with clients like that where they would have a younger sibling steal the cookies. Like they wouldn't steal the cookies. They would get a younger sibling to steal the cookies for them. So what he's describing, like these are things that I've seen in attachment work and attachment trauma. And this can be treated. And I've also worked with, like, if also, okay, this isn't funny. Like, I'm not laughing because it's funny. What I'm laughing about is the fact that my cousins came to live with us for, I think, a year. Because my cousins just my two male cousins, one is 2 years younger than me, and the other is 3 years younger. I think it's 2 and 3 years younger, or something like that. And after they left, I was still blaming. So something would be broken, and my mom would be like, "Who broke this?" And I'd be like, "Andrew." It must have been Andrew and Andrew and Leon. That they hadn't been in the house for a year. Something would go missing. My mom would be like, "Where did this go?" Andrew. Andrew must have misplaced it. They hadn't been in the house for a long time. Like, does he know what it's like to have a sibling or be a sibling? Like I don't like this because he's trying to use this to justify murder. And it's just not working for me. It's not. We'll see what the jury says. My cousin did it. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, Andrew and Leon. It was one of them. I didn't do it. I'm mommy's angel. I used to polish my halo. Could I? Mommy, no. It wasn't me. It was probably me. It was probably me. So he made a false report to CBS. So he called CPS and said he was a neighbor and made a false report to CPS. I don't know what happened with that. And he's going to try to say that he wanted the child to have face-to-face time with an investigator. This is so complicated. Would the little girl and others still be SA'd if this didn't happen? Abuse should have been reported. And so the jury is not. I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna make myself big for this part. The fact that there were allegations of SA, the jury cannot consider that. The judge has excluded that. The judge has said, "No, you can't say this. You can't. This is excluded." This because they already ruled that this wasn't justifiable homicide, or it wasn't, or it like it. This didn't meet the criteria of protection of another, because it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't like he walked in and the act was happening. Um, uh, and That's the difficult part of this case, because did he possibly save that child from future SA? Maybe. But this child is now, it's my understanding, is in protective custody. This child lost her mother. Like, she's about to, like, there's going to be, her dad has been arrested. I don't think any family. So this child is now in foster care, and the foster care system is not perfect. There are children that are harmed in foster care, and so two things can be true at the same time. So yes, maybe he did protect her from her mother, and he also could have severely traumatized her for killing her mother too. And does this child now feel like it was my fault that my mother's gone because people suspected or people found out what was happening? My heart breaks for the children. Like, that's who I think about. All right, let's keep it going. This dude is hard to listen to. That's why I have to keep interrupting him. Good gosh. Does he have I don't want to say it. Okay, we're gonna keep it going.
little duplicates of herself and training and enlisting her siblings to act as proxies for her so that she wouldn't actually get in trouble, because she knew that we all had our eyes on her because of her behavior and we knew we couldn't trust her. So if she even had 2 minutes with one of her younger siblings where no one was within earshot, she would tell them, hey, mom's going to go check the mail. I just saw the mail truck go. When she's doing that, I want you to go run into her bedroom and go into her jewelry, or go and get this for me and we'll split it. Go and get that food that mom said we can't have till the weekend or something. So she was an incredibly corrupting influence on anyone around her that she could exert.
Let's all remind ourselves he's talking about Grace. Grace is not on trial. Grace has nothing to do with any of this. So the evidence of the essay was not found until after Christina died. So that evidence was not found until after Christina died. And then Sleepy Valor said John Mello made the child's father made reports to CPS, but he also threatened the guardian ad litem and other workers. And so they did not believe him. So he probably came off as erratic. People have talked about his blink rate is pretty normal. He doesn't seem stressed to me. He doesn't seem stressed to be. Now, I'm not a body language expert. I already commented on Dr. G Explains channel, and I was like, please, Dr. G, explain this. I also have his email. If he doesn't do it by Saturday, I might have to like send an email to Dr. G too. Like, Dr. G, please, I need you to break this down. I am not a body language expert, but like this dude, he's just like I get psychopathic type. I get. And I think he wanted to be a Marine. I think he wanted to fight for people. I think he wanted to be an advocate, but it's not like this. You don't do it like this. Yes, he's trying to say that Grace ruined his other siblings. I think he's because I think he thinks he's above it all and he could clearly see through Grace. And so I think he's saying that Grace corrupted the other siblings, but not him. He puts himself on this moral high horse that is so contradicting, and I do not get it. I do not get it. Like, it's just, ugh, it gives me a ick. And it's my understanding that when he finally admits to the crime, the jury like looks shocked because he admits to doing it. I'm gonna let this play a little bit more, and then we are gonna fast forward to when he talks about what he did.
Her influence on. Again, I call her a vampire who sucks the goodness out of others. This is an incredibly appropriate metaphor because that's what vampires do. They're intelligent, they're dead inside, and they eventually kill the people around them unless they find someone who might be useful to them, and then they create a duplicate of themselves that they can control. And this is exactly what Grace would do. So when John was telling me all this, I realized that there was an incredible danger that what Christina Parcell was a future preview of what Aida Mello could potentially become if she was left in this woman's custody and was raised by her.
So he was afraid of who the child would become if she was left in the custody of her mother.
And the facts have borne out that I was right.
And what he's hinting at is that the allegations of SA proved to be true.
But
Yes, Your Honor. Sustained. Will instruct the jury to disregard the last comment. Thank you.
Zach, at some point,
He seems so defiant to me. Like, he just seems defiant. Like, he's just like, I'm going to say what I have to say. The jury's going to hear exactly what I want them to hear. But he's a calmer version of this than Robert Tellis. Because to me, Robert Tellis came off like kind of erratic and a little all over the place. Like he was trying to apologize to the judge. Like he's just out here breaking the rules calmly and with no, like he's just like, I'm here to say what I came to say, and nobody is going to tell me otherwise because a higher authority gave me permission to do this. Like it that's where I get a little bit of a I'm above the law, I'm above rules and expectations. And it's mind blowing that he's talking about grace that way. Like he's saying grace is unemotional. Grace doesn't abide by the rules. Grace, but it's like, seriously? Dude. So I wonder how he felt about his parents bringing in 5 children. 5 is a lot, and if it all happened at the same, I've never heard of somebody adopting 5 unless it was like a sibling group. So I've heard of sibling groups being adopted together as a group of 5, uh, but his family brought and it sounds like it might have been all at the same time. I wonder if he felt he wasn't good enough or, like, I don't know, like, that's I wonder, but I hope Grace is okay. I hope Grace is thriving. Because I think he's gonna go to jail, but we'll see. It's up to the jury. It's up to the jury. Okay, so it was a sibling group, and sometimes sibling groups do not always get along. So I worked with a someone from a large sibling group, and there was fear of someone in that group, and it was best for the siblings to not be adopted together. And so I know sometimes they try to keep families together, but that is not always what's best. No, his family is not in court. Like this is about him murdering Christina. That is why we are here. Like we are not here to talk about Grace, but he's gonna keep doing it, and he's gonna defy the judge even more.
Was Grace actually removed from your family?
Yes.
Um, Describe for this jury why or the circumstance or the event that prompted her removal from your family.
It had been 4 years of what I've been describing. She had been sent to different girls' homes around the country, many of.
And sometimes, so if she had been sent to treatment facilities, and if what she needs is attachment and trauma work, sending her away can be one of the worst things you can do. And make sure to check out Pretty Lies and Alibis. It's my understanding that she has some. So, oh wait a minute, what? Or oh wow, wow, his family is supportive of him. Okay, but Pretty Lies and Alibis has been covering this. Um, this is just this is just wow. Like I was saying, sometimes one of the worst things you can do is do an out of home placement when the issue is reactive attachment disorder. And then you need intensive family supports when they come back and I'm into the home. Oy.
which had records of never expelling a single student, and she was the first for many of them that they expelled and sent back to us. And it finally just got so bad that we realized she was going to be a physical danger to our family. I discovered a diary that she had made where she described in detail my parents having their eyes gouged out and dying, and how once my parents were out of the way and dead, she would be able to assume her role as rightful queen of the country. So she just had these.
And and yet he's on trial for unaliving a woman to assume his role as savior of this little girl. And I just because so Grace probably did not like them. She probably was not attached to them, and he talks to her. He talks about her like he was her parent, and he was her brother, her adopted brother. And why is he searching her room? And so that's where I have questions. And I don't think, and maybe it was best that, because maybe this home ended up not being the right fit, but, oh,
Psychotic, psychopathic delusions of violence and grandeur. And we called DSS and asked them to remove her from the home.
and she probably made some allegations against the family because they were going to threaten. And also sometimes, like, if the family can't manage one adoptive child, sometimes DSS comes in to assess everyone, and then sometimes they do take a look at, okay, well, are there any other children that are at risk as well?
We're going to come back to that in a second, or in a little while. You testified about things that John told you about Christina. Did he also provide you with other information about Christina that informed your opinion of her or what you came to know about her?
Yes.
What were some of the documents or other pieces of information that John provided you?
An objection to hearsay.
No, we're not offering it for its truth. We're offering it to show what he knew. It's State versus Vic. I've cited, Your Honor, we are not offering it for its truth. Go ahead.
He offered me, among other things, three very pertinent collections of information. One was the photographs that have been discussed that I sent in mailings to various people, along with advertisements from an escort website, which were
So just get ready. He is about to he's pretty much trying to say the victim was a bad person. And
connected with these photographs. These photographs were of Christina Parcell in various stages of undress.
Mm.
And John told me that they were prostitution advertisements from her previous career as a prostitute. And looking at these photographs, there was no doubt in my mind that that's what these were. And I don't say this in any way to try to shame. It's simply that, I mean, who said it? Like pornography, you know it when you see it. Well, I think the same can be said in terms of these photographs. They were not cute, sexy, intimate photographs that someone might send to someone they're dating or something.
I don't trust his judgment of any of that. I don't trust his judgment of any of this. Question: do I think what he did to Christina is what he wished he did to Grace? And I wonder if he wished he could have saved his family from the pain of Grace. Now, so I wonder. I wonder. And Marissa asked a question about if I think that SA survivors are empathizing with him. And I think there would be more empathy with him, empathy if the father had done the crime. Because let's say the father found out something was happening to his daughter and the father did the crime. I still think he would be like, he would go on trial. A jury would have to he's just a friend of the father. Like, to me, it's like, uh, like and he had never met her. He had no hard evidence, and he could have been wrong. He just so happened to be right, but what if he was wrong? What if he was wrong? I've worked a lot of cases of false allegations, and uh or even, yeah, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. Was some of his aggression displaced? So I think he felt this obligation to, and this is what he's saying he did. And what if, it's just bad. And somebody mentioned, I am a survivor, and I don't feel bad for him at all. Yeah, he doesn't seem to feel bad about what he did. He definitely seems to feel justified in what he did. Live stream is going to start soon, so I want to skip ahead to 5:15. Oh my gosh, this guy. Okay, let's skip ahead to here where he's talking about playing in the where he's leading up to that he's about to go out of town.
To play classical concerts on cruise ships, and they had a pianist drop out at the last minute. And long story short, I interviewed for this job and got this job. I think on October 12th, but it was about that time, maybe a little earlier.
I believe the incident happened on October 21st. That's what we're leading up to.
Where were the winds on October 12th and 13th?
They were in Europe.
And ultimately, did you take Christina Parcells' life on October the 13th?
13, sorry. I bet.
Yes.
Sorry, 13.
Because I believed it was absolutely necessary to save Aida. And I was right.
Objection, Your Honor.
This dude just said October 13th. Yes. And that he believed that it was right. Oh wow. And then somebody mentioned Recovery Addict just had a guy on that was discussing the cultural issues of where Zach lived and how the jury may perceive him because of it. And are they talking about the spiritual side? Because he did talk about praying about it, and it almost seems like he thinks God gave him permission to do it. But what about like Lori Vallow? Lori Vallow also thought that her children, now she still won't admit what she did, but I don't think we want this. I don't think we want this. I don't think this is right. My own personal thoughts. Uh,
Your Honor, sustained, I ask you to disregard.
and the jury is not going to be able to disregard what they just heard, but the judge is going to say like that these things. I think the judge is going to give an instruction that says the things that the judge has told them to not pay attention to, that the jury cannot consider that as part of their deliberation.
The testimony that you just heard.
I want to talk about the timing. You've alluded to it a little bit. But I want to be more specific. October the 13th, describe for the jury why you felt that was the time, why you believed it, or why it was necessary to do it on October the 13th, specifically, or in this period of time.
I had been wrestling with this since June, as I previously stated.
So, and this was brutal. So he stabbed her to death, and like this was brutal. And he's trying to say that he was justified for what he did, and I don't think he was. And I am for protecting children. Okay, like I am for, if a child is not okay, they shouldn't just tell one parent. They shouldn't just tell one teacher. Like the child, and it's hard because sometimes the child, because it sounds like the harm might have started from when she was about 5 to 8, which is confusing. And this is just why.
Since the end of June, I believed Aida was in complete and grave danger every moment of her life that she was living with her mother.
But who gives you the right? Who are you to get to he's now now I understand caring for children, okay? So I get that. Um I've worked cases, I've worked with clients where I've reported what looked to me to possibly be harm, and social services found it, it was unfounded, or they end up dropping the case, or a child gets removed and I continue working with them during that period of time. I've also worked with kids that have either I've worked with victims of SA, or during the course of treatment figured out that someone in the home was being harmed, and part of our safety plan was getting somebody into treatment. But you can't unalive people for this stuff. It's just not how our society works. But we'll keep it going.
And the other things that I had tried to do to save her from that were not working. So I was having this incredible wrestling match within myself for these months, feeling that I needed to do something to save her, and yet feeling this incredible reluctance to do the one thing that I knew would save her because of how terrible I knew it would be to do it, even though I believed it would be right. So by the time October 13th rolled around, I had been grappling with this for a long time. And I was experiencing a tremendous amount of guilt that I had waited as long as I did. Because I
So not guilt about what he was about to do, guilt that he hadn't done it sooner.
should have acted sooner. And I didn't do that. So I had come to the realization that I had gotten this offer to go on this cruise ship, and I would have been leaving the country for a long time. Essentially, it was now or never. I had an opportunity to save her from a danger that I knew she was in, and that I knew was not going to cease. And I just couldn't go on with my life and leave her to drown.
And I think he's trying to bring up an emotion here. I think he's trying to come off emotional. It doesn't I think he's trying to portray sad. Now this is just I don't know him. I don't but that's how it looks to me.
I mean, I had a great life. I had everything. I made money doing what I loved. I was going to be going to the South Pacific to play concerts for rich people on cruise ships.
And he seems proud of those things. He seems very proud of all those things, and how much of a wonderful person he is. And I still think he's trying to protect his image of I'm such an amazing person. Oh, okay.
So, I mean, but how could I go and enjoy that and know that I was leaving a kid to her fate, a kid who thought that I was her friend? I would never have been.
Y'all correct me in the chat. Had he met her? Had he met the child? I guess. Had he met the child? I guess I don't know. Wait.
Able to look at myself in the mirror again if I had done that. So, specific to October 13th, I believed that there would be a period of time at the house when Christina Parcell would be alone. And I wanted to make sure that absolutely no one was there. Not Aida, not Lutina, not Brad Post. Because again, this was not about revenge or retribution or anything.
This is my first time hearing this part. What? What? And so it looks like he did meet the child. Okay, I'm just gonna press play. Y'all.
Thing. I wasn't angry. The only thing I was feeling that day was pity. And I wanted to make sure that no bystander or no one else would be involved in this, which could have happened if someone else was there.
Zach, let's talk.
How courteous of you. All snark. All snark. Yes. This content is not for the kiddos' ears. I think he's about to get into how he did the things. So if you have kiddos around, this is not for kiddos' ears. My kiddos at school, they didn't even have a 2-hour delay. There was a little bit, we got a little bit of snow yesterday. My kid's school did not care. On time.
Talk about that. So once you concluded, believed
that she had to die. Like, I don't think he should have been able to do that, but
absolutely this was what you had to do, did you go about planning?
Yes, I planned very carefully to make sure, one, like I said, that no one else would be involved in this.
So like this is very premeditated. I planned very carefully to make sure that there would be no witnesses, there would be no bystanders, nobody else would be hurt. Only the person I deemed no longer should be able to live. We just can't do that.
And two, I knew that if I tried to do this and failed, it would only be worse for Aida.
And consistent with the court's instructions, why did you believe it'd be worse for Aida?
Because I believed that if I was discovered doing this, it would connect me to John Mello. And I believed, and I still believe, that he's a great father and he is Aida's best shot.
He was arrested, sir. He's probably going to go to jail. We'll see. He's been arrested. I'm going to look up what John Mello's charges are. If y'all already know in the chat, y'all can feel free to put them in the chat, but I'm going to try to look up John's charges, because you said John offered you $5,000 and then $10,000 to unalive his ex-wife. So you did that to your friend John.
At having a happy and safe childhood.
Let's talk about the planning. Did you get a gun?
Yes.
At the time, were you also carrying your own firearm?
Yes, I had a concealed weapons permit at the time, so I generally would always be carrying a 9mm concealed weapon on my person for personal protection.
Did you get another firearm for this?
Yes, I did.
What type of firearm did you get?
It was a 22
Okay.
Maybe a month or month and a half earlier.
Did you also get a knife?
Yes, I did.
Where did you get the knife?
At the gun show.
At about the same time?
It was the same day.
Let's talk about what else, what other planning you did.
So John Mello was arrested for, I think it's accessory after the fact, according to what I found. It looks like it's accessory before the fact, sorry. Accessory before the fact to a felony and solicitation to commit a felony. That's what he was charged for. Okay.
Did you obtain gloves?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Remember where you got the gloves?
No, I don't.
Did you obtain any chemicals?
Yes, I bought some paint thinner because, again, I didn't want to be connected to this because I wanted to make sure this would actually do something to save Aida. So in case a glove had broken or I had left a fingerprint or something, I wanted to be able to clean it with the paint thinner.
So now we're going to talk about how we didn't want to get caught. Okay. Okay. So just a heads up, I am monitoring the live feed. He is going to be cross-examined today, and we have time to watch some of it. I have to go by 2, and so we'll see how much of it we're able to get to. And I don't think Mello, I don't think Zach would say that he was manipulated at all. I think he would say he wanted to. I don't. Like, he felt called. It's weird. It gives me an ick. That's ugh. But I think he feels justified, and if he has to go to jail for saving a child, I think he's going to feel like I did the right thing. She is safe from her mother, and I. That's my thinking of from what I've seen.
Zach, let's talk about your bike and what you did to become familiar with the area of Canebrake leading up to October the 13th.
I had looked at a route I would be able to take from the mountain house that I was staying at on back roads to avoid traffic cameras. So maybe a few days beforehand, I looked at Google Maps and I figured out how this route would lead.
Let's talk about October the 12th. Did you originally plan to do this on October the 12th?
Yes.
Zach, consistent with the court's instructions, describe to the jury why you didn't do it on October the 12th.
I woke up that day and I just felt such reluctance, and something in my gut told me it wasn't the right day. And I waited one more day.
Let's go to October the 13th. You testified earlier that you wanted a plan in part to prevent or minimize danger to others. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
Did you have information about where people would be on October the 13th?
To a degree, yes.
How did you get that information?
From John Mello.
Oh, so that's how Johnson. So if John told him where people were going to be and everything, so did John know what you were about to do? The police have questions. So it's my understanding the prosecution was not aware of any of this. And all of this is coming out during his testimony in front of the jury.
What did he tell you?
He told me when Aida would be at school, and he told me that he believed Christina had a job interview at some point that morning.
So let's talk about that morning.
And it's so weird. Okay, y'all let me know in the chat. Put a 1 if you think he's throwing his friend under the bus. Put a 2 if you think he doesn't realize what he's doing. 1 if he's throwing John under the bus. 2 if he doesn't realize he's saying John did a crime. Cuz so okay. I'm gonna keep going and we'll come back.
The evening of October the 12th, where did you spend the night?
at the Mountain House.
Ah.
You woke up on the morning of October 13th and you left the Mountain House, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Uh, Do you remember approximately when you left the Mountain House?
It was much later than I meant to. I think it was about 8 or 8:15 in the morning.
When you left the Mountain House, in which vehicle did you leave?
In my
And so even though he swore to tell the truth, I don't know that he had to give all the details that he's giving. And so a lot of you feel like it might be unintentional. A lot of you feel like it could be intentional. And um somebody also mentioned that he made some unflattering comments about Mello in his testimony because he described him as being kind of erratic and all of this. So I don't know enough about him. It sounds like a savior complex, which wouldn't that's not a DSM criteria. That's not a DSM diagnosis. And this is what he's saying justifies what he did. I don't know if he would have thought or said something different if the DNA had been thrown out. Because he seems so proud of what he did. I agree. And I think his friend is gonna end up on trial based on some of his testimony.
Ford Ranger.
What was in the back of the Ford Ranger?
My bike.
That bike right there.
Yes.
And just for the clarity of the record, this is a state's exhibit. I don't have the number that was introduced.
I believe the child went into DSS custody or protective custody, and John Mello is arrested. The father is arrested. So, yeah. Like he seems to be flipping the script. Like he doesn't what he does is okay, but what other people isn't okay. And I don't personally feel like he's on the spectrum, but I know some people get that feeling. And he's just testifying this one time, so I wouldn't be able to diagnose spectrum or not. And yes, I agree. So I mentioned this earlier that I believe his sister Grace likely had reactive attachment disorder. And he should have never been in any type of caregiving role with a child with reactive attachment disorder. My personal thoughts.
What else did you put in your pickup truck in addition to the bike?
I brought the gloves.
So the feeling I get is more psychopathic. So like I get more of a especially the way that he talked about Grace and how he's using the story of his and then the way his defiance with the judge, because he was told do not talk about these things. And multiple times he talked about the things that he was not supposed to talk about. And so yeah, like and I and so and this one behavior, so personalities are on a spectrum, and personalities are definitely on a spectrum, but I do not feel that he is on the autism spectrum. That's just my own personal thoughts, and I didn't assess him. I don't know what he is, but it comes across the feeling. So I've normally with individuals that are on the autism spectrum, I get the feeling from that, like sometimes there's like I don't know, there's just a different feeling. This feels different for me personally. Yeah. Mm.
And I put this in a backpack. I brought the paint thinner and the gun I described, the 22. I brought a knife and I brought a box
He's about to describe the crime, I believe.
That was made to look like a gift wrapped box, and a bunch
A calculation of that. A box that was made to look like a gift?
of roses that I had bought the day before.
Talking about the
Like, he just
roses in a minute. When you left the mountain house, where did you go?
I drove to a road that runs parallel very close to Canebrake.
When you got to that location, well, before we go further, describe for this jury the ride in your truck from the mountain house to this location, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what was going through your mind.
Like I said, I had wrestled with this for months. I had come to the point where rationally I knew that the only way Aida was going to be saved from what she was enduring was for me to take this route.
and I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that was the only way. So in his mind, yes, that's what he felt and he thought. I do not think that this was the only way.
Knew that. But there's another element, a human element, which is just so reluctant and revulsed by the idea of taking a human life. So I had prayed a great deal about this. I had prayed like I'd never prayed before, because even knowing that logically this was the right thing to do, it didn't.
And this is where with prayer, people have to be careful, because the voice of God and your voice can sound a lot alike. And what you want to do. So I don't trust, me personally, I don't trust his judgment in this situation and his judgment in that prayer, because I think he was looking for the green light. I don't know. And he's going to say that he was looking for things that could stop him, like he was trying to find other ways. That's what he's going to say. But for me personally, and y'all know, so I am a Christian. I'm an extremely liberal Christian, but I some of the most dangerous words is God said. And that's something my pastor says all the time. He's like, two of the most scariest things somebody can say is God said. Because sometimes people, like, they'll say, so God's name has been used to justify slavery and like genocide and like horrific things. And if that's your God, I'm like, no. Like, I don't, no thanks. And so humans are fallible. Is that the word? Like, humans have their own wishes and desires. And I think sometimes we don't accurately see or hear what's right, because I personally don't feel. Now, I don't know him. I don't know, but I don't think God would tell him to do this to this child's mother. So I've worked with people that have been harmed by a parent, and while they wanted that parent to have some justice, um none of them, very few if any of them, wanted that parent to die. And yes, war has been used in the name of so many things. And so ugh, I just can't with this. But he's in the Bible Belt. He's in South Carolina, and there could be somebody on the jury that empathizes with this. And so, but I hope, um, because we have laws and we're supposed to have separation of church and state and all, but it's a whole thing.
It didn't satisfy that emotional and human aspect where I felt that I needed permission to do this. And I was so terrified that somehow I might be doing the wrong thing. Like I knew that it was right logically, but there's the emotional aspect was just reeling against this idea.
I think he's just trying to say, I'm not a psychopathic murderer. Like that's what he's trying to say, but like.
And more so because she was a woman. I was raised to always protect my sisters and mother, and I opened doors for women growing up. So this idea was just repugnant to me, even though I believed it was necessary to save a child. So on that morning, I had prayed earlier, a few days earlier, and I had felt that this was the right thing to do, no matter how terrible and difficult it was going to be. So like I said, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity because I realized that this was just the only way to save a child. And it felt like a foregone conclusion because I knew that I had a duty to do this to save a child. So
his defense is this was his duty to save the child. And legally, I don't think but it's going to be up to the jury. And it reminds me of the Colin case that we saw recently but he claimed it was self-defense, or he claimed, I don't know, yeah. But the Colin case, they really talked about how horrible the mother was, and the jury found him not guilty. And so there is a chance that he might be found not guilty. I don't know. It really is going to be up to the jury. I think this is a dangerous mentality to have, because I don't think it should be up to an individual person to take it this far, because there are false allegations. There are bad custody disputes where somebody is just trying to get rid of the other partner and not have to deal with court. And so
physically driving my truck there, I was experiencing a level of anxiety and physical illness that I had just never experienced due to stress before. My hands were shaking. I was in a cold sweat, and I was fighting the urge to vomit before I even got close there. A few times I thought I was going to have to pull off to the side of the road because I could hardly keep my truck straight. My hands were shaking so badly. But the whole time I was just thinking, if I don't do this, if I turn back, then I'm consigned.
And so this is what he's saying he felt, and this is what he's saying he experienced. And I think he knows what he should be thinking and feeling. I don't know if this was true. It could, but I don't know if he was feeling nervous. I don't know if he was feeling that way. After his description of Grace, I think he knows this is how a person should feel in this situation. And so that's where I don't know how he was feeling, but I don't see that anxiety or stress as he's talking about it. Uh to me, it's almost as though he saw Christina as being like less of a, I don't know, like just an an obstacle. Like this is like so I think the family, I think there probably was an adoptive sister. Um but she was out of the family by 14 years old. It sounds like the parents were probably able to relinquish parental rights. To me, Grace showed signs of reactive attachment disorder based on how he described things. I do not believe and to my knowledge, Grace hasn't unalived anyone. So, all right, let's keep it going.
Aida to her fate when I know that I could have done something to stop what was happening. So I just tried to take my mind off of it. And I tried to just go and drive a little bit farther and a little bit farther and not think about what I was going to have to do when I got there. And when I finally got to the point where I parked my truck, this feeling only increased. I knew the plan, but I was having so much difficulty going through with it. So I took my bike out of the truck and I had a mask on and clothing that's been described already. And I just tried to focus on putting one foot in front of the other on my bike.
He's describing how hard it was for him to do the crime. And I don't have empathy. Like, I don't feel bad for him. Does that make sense? And I don't know that that's the point of this, because I do think he's trying to still justify and come off like that he's not this, you know, person, like that he's not this bad person. I still think his image is what he's most concerned about.
And it felt like some runs or rucks I had been on where all I could do was focus on putting one foot in front of the other because it was so difficult to keep going. And I just kept seeing Aida's face and reminding myself that if I don't do this, no one's going to come to save her. And I kept pedaling, and eventually I arrived in front of 122 Canebrake.
Zach, we're going to talk about what happened when you got to 122 Canebrake in just a second. You described having a gun and having not having a gun.
I was very concerned about using a gun because of how loud it would be, and I didn't want to alert a
I think he didn't want to get caught. He didn't want to get caught.
Neighbor or a bystander who might come to investigate and get involved.
Because would you have taken them out too? Like, what if somebody had heard and the neighbor came over? What would you have done then? I don't know.
Well, I tried to suppress the gun by making a makeshift suppressor. And in movies, these things are made out to be like it's very easy, and a suppressed gun is just very silent. And that's
I'm glad it's hard. I'm glad crimes are hard. Like let's don't do crimes. Don't do crimes.
It's not the case. So ultimately, I test fired the gun, and I had bought some subsonic ammunition, which is supposed to be quieter, but I didn't realize that on a revolver, a suppressor doesn't work because the end of the cylinder is open. And I realized just a day or two before.
Y'all, I have such a dark sense of humor. So I don't know about pew pews. And so but like, don't do crimes, but he, God, like this is so hard. I don't know how I feel about this testimony. The jury has this. They have his side. I'm looking forward to cross-examination and to how the state comes back.
Beforehand that I couldn't use a gun because it could potentially involve someone else in this if someone heard a gunshot and came to investigate.
If you had had a
So I wonder, would he have killed somebody else if they had come to investigate?
choice, would you have rather used a gun?
I would have rather.
Is that a bad question? Why are we asking that question? Is that the right question to ask right there? Do we need to know why he? I don't know that that's a good question, because the way I'm hearing it is he was trying to not get caught, and he was trying to not have to unalive more people, or like for other people to get involved. And so Would you have preferred to use a pew pew?
Not to had to have done it at all, but if I had to, yes, I would have chosen a gun
Why is that?
because it would have been quicker and more humane.
So you realized that what you did was inhumane.
All right, let's talk about, you arrive at the house, 122 King Road. Do you remember about what time you arrived there?
I think it was a little after 9 in the morning.
And do you arrive there on your bike? Is that how you,
Yes.
and you testified about this a little bit, but tell the jury what you're wearing.
I had on black pants and a black thermal and a gray shirt over that. I had on a black beanie and a white medical mask, and I had on black gloves and a black backpack.
Do you remember how many vehicles were parked in the driveway when you got there?
One.
When you arrived at the house and you got off your bike, what did you do?
I laid my bike down in the driveway and I took my backpack off and I took out the box that had been gift wrapped that had an end open. And I put the .22 revolver in that box. And I put the backpack back on my back and I took a bunch of roses and I walked up to the door and I rang the doorbell. And I was shaking and freaking out at this point because there was nowhere I wanted to be less than at that house on that morning.
And once again, I personally, I don't know that this is true, but I think he has an image that he's trying to put forth to the jury that this was incredibly, and it could have been, and I hope it was. Like I don't like don't do crimes, but like I think he's trying to put this forward that I'm not a monster, but like it's not coming across great.
And when I rang the doorbell, the door opened and a woman came to the front. And I thought it was Christina Parcell, but I wanted to make.
I hadn't heard this part. I had heard people talk about this part, but I hadn't heard this part. I'm gonna rewind it a little bit. But he didn't even know what she looked like. He's there with a pew pew and a knife, and he doesn't even know what she looks like. Oh my gosh. Let's keep it going.
Came to the front. And I thought it was Christina Parcell, but I wanted to make sure. And I also wanted to make sure that no one else was home. So I told her that while I was holding the box and the roses, that I had a delivery for Lutina Parcell, her sister. And she told me that Lutina wasn't home. So at this point, I realized that
That is calculating. That is calculating. That is, ooh, ew. That doesn't feel good. And ooh, ugh. I don't have words for that one.
Christina was at the house alone. And I handed her the roses. And I took the revolver out of the box and I pointed it at her and I told her to be quiet. And
My heart breaks for no matter what happened, I know she did some horrific things to her daughter. Um, Her family is probably figuring out for the first time exactly how she died. And so, trigger warnings for this part because he is going to describe what he did.
To go back into the house, which she did. And I followed her into the house and I shut the door. And I was experiencing such anxiety that my body wasn't really doing what I was telling it to do anymore. Like when I realized that I couldn't use the gun, which was unloaded at this point, my plan had been to try to knock her unconscious because I didn't want to cause her or anyone any pain. That wasn't my intention. I just wanted to save Aida and to make sure that no one else who was a bystander would be involved in this or could be endangered in any way. So I tried, while she was holding the roses, to strike her on the head and knock her unconscious. But my body was fighting me because even though I knew who she was and what she was doing and the danger that was putting Aida in, I was still looking at her and I was seeing a sympathetic figure. I was seeing a woman, and I had always been taught never to hurt a woman, to always protect women and children. So when I went to strike her with the gun, my hand didn't really do what I was trying to tell it to. I essentially pulled my strike. It felt like a time I had been cliff jumping with friends. I have a
Cliff jumping?
big fear of heights, and
Sir, how did we get to from what? How did we get to cliff jumping? No, sir. Oh my gosh.
there was a 30-foot face that you could jump off and jump into a deep pool of water. And when I would run up to the edge, I would
He's afraid of heights. What?
try to get a running start
No.
and jump off the edge, and I just couldn't. Like my body would stop me against my.
Okay. It's not funny. So like I can't with any of this anymore. Recovery addict and they did a great job over on Court Confidential. They did a great job talking about the testimony from yesterday. And a recovery addict mentioned how, as he's describing what he did, that he did it in kind of a removed way where he's not saying like I stabbed her. Like he just the way that the language that he used was kind of removed. But he's about to get back up on the stand, and I wanna watch this live with you all, and so wow. And this so he doesn't know what the prosecution is going to ask, and so I think we can see more for this next part. We were just we were just waiting for live court to start. Like, that's literally what we were doing. Like, he I and I don't know what the jury's thinking of all of this. So let's get caught up with live court.
Everybody right here, safely. We're gonna continue with the case. Cross-examination. Mr. Hughes.
Let's go.
And Mr. Hughes, I will remind you that you're still on trial.
I understand.
This is cross-examination by the state, and we are live. So I will interrupt some if you would like to watch.
66 up there
If you would like to watch with no interruptions, I have the full link down in the description. Okay.
on the overhead. Mr. Hughes, when you dragged Christina Parcell across the floor of the front room where you killed her, did you drag her by her arm or by her ankle?
Okay, that's a question.
I don't remember for certain, but I think by the ankle.
That's all the questions I need to ask this, Your Honor.
Any limited redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Mr. Hughes.
That was it? What? Wait a minute. I'm disappointed. I am disappointed. Do you remember what? Well, he admitted to the crime. So like what other questions do you have? He said exactly what he did. And so maybe the state didn't want to give him a mic to continue to badmouth and say more things to the jury. So to me, he's a defiant witness because I think he has a narrative that he wants the jury to see and believe. So maybe the state, they're just gonna start their this was so anticlimactic. I am disappointed, but I get it. Because any question they asked him, I think he was going to continue to badmouth the victim, to talk about rock climbing. Like, I don't know. Like, I think he needed control. And wow. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that.
Any other witness? Defense going to call any other witnesses?
Your Honor,
And I am aware that you wanted to put additional problems.
yes, none at this time.
Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to go back to your jury room, and I'm going to be taking up a few matters, hopefully very quickly.
I mean, he admitted to the crime. He said exactly what he did. Okay. 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 Just like don't even give him the mic. Ask him one question. Do you remember? Because he had a great memory for everything else. But then when asked about how she was dragged, all of a sudden he doesn't remember that part. Wow. I was not expecting that at all. Welcome. I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist. Here we talk about the psychological aspects of true crime. For this case, I mental health. So he has not claim to be paranoid or delusional, or he's not claiming to be not guilty by reason of insanity. He's not even saying that he was essayed as a child and that's why he wanted to protect this child. He did describe having a difficult relationship with his adoptive sister growing up, and it seems like he really related a lot um with Christina and his adoptive sister. Like he projected feelings and my personal thoughts and opinions. And so Marissa, so maybe I should rewind. we can watch the one question again. So
None at this time.
let's go back. So this is cross-examination. If you missed it. Cross-examination.
And it states Exhibit 66 up there on the overhead. Mr. Hughes, when you dragged Christina Parcell across the floor of the front room where you killed her, did you drag her by her arm or by her ankle?
I don't remember for certain, but I think by the ankle.
That's all the questions I need to ask this, Your Honor.
Any limited redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
So, okay. Um, in general, so it's not because this was one act and one, so personality and traits are normally seen across settings with different people. Um, yes. Uh, when I look at how he talked about his adoptive sister and described her as unemotional and that she could talk about horrific things as though she's talking about making a sandwich. And then he, in my opinion, kind of did a similar thing. And for him to not see the irony of that, I think that is that's a lot. Um Court is on break, and so we're gonna chat. And for me, and I wonder what the jury's gonna hear, because as he's describing Grace, and because he lied. He made a false report to CPS. He intentionally asked her, was her sis like, was she her sister? Like, he got there and he was like, I have a delivery for for the sister. And when he realized that she was home alone, he did this thing. And it's just, all of it is just a lot, a lot, a lot. And for him to just switch from talking about a crime to just compare it to a fear of heights, like the anxiety I was feeling, it's kind of like that time I went rock climbing. But I think the state knew that he was going to be a difficult witness, and it was better to not let him open any more doors for the jury. So, wow. Let's see what happens next.
Welcome back. Just be patient and understand there are procedures that have to go in, and I'm sorry that I have to send y'all in and out, okay? All right, anything further?
Nothing further, the defense rests.
Defense rest. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you can go back to the jury room.
This poor jury. I heard there was one day where they heard like 20 minutes of testimony or something. I don't know. But the defense has to rest in front of the jury. And so the jury's about to leave. Ay. That was a very strong question. And he remembered that he might have drug her by her feet. Um, and so, i- and somebody asked if there was a recording of his police interrogation. And I don't know if he lawyered up. It's my understanding that this was the first time he had admitted to doing the crime. Oh, the ankle. Oh, yeah, the ankle. Yeah, he just said the ankle. 'Cause he doesn't, he uses that, detached language when he's describing it. Um, yeah. Ay. This case is hard. Um, I do think that, what Christina did to her daughter is not okay. Um, and, um And at the same time, I don't think that some friend of her ex-husband has the right to take her life. Okay, he didn't speak to the police. I'm not surprised. Somebody's playing music. Court TV's playing a little bit of music. No, we're on break until 1:30. Okay, the jury will return at 1:30. So thank y'all so much for being here with me today. So Zara, after Christina's death, it came out that there was child harm. So there was SA, so child SA. It's my understanding by the mother and possibly I don't know if there was anyone else. But the child was but the judge said the jury can't be aware of that. So the judge had ruled that this was not a case of protection of another because there is a defense of protection of another. And so it's my understanding, I think when this happened, the child was 8 years old. I think the harm started when she was around 5 years old, based on the things I've seen. I could be wrong. But it's my understanding that they have found proof of that they're after the death. I think they found CSAM. Yeah. And but what if he was wrong? So what if he did this and he was wrong and the child wasn't being harmed? And it was just an ex-husband that was in a bad custody dispute and said this thing to a friend to get him to do this. Okay, I was thinking the mom's boyfriend was involved too. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think he's still alive and I would think he's been arrested and they're likely he's likely facing charges. The child may have to testify in that case. So if there is a case against the ex-boyfriend, if he doesn't take a plea deal. So yeah, so people y'all are best. Y'all are amazing in the chat. I think they're figuring out what they're going to do now. Maybe they're doing lunch and then they'll be back at 1:30. Let me look at my schedule because I oh wow. Okay. Depending on what happens later today, we will see. So I will either cover what I wasn't able to cover on Saturday if there's a verdict with this case or if anything happens with this case today or tomorrow. Keep an eye out. I might go live again around 4 o'clock if something big happens with this case today. So thank you for adding this. Brad Post, the fiance, was arrested for CSAM that allegedly have so there's been an arrest. All right. So I can't stand the man and I want to go eat. I have the link down in the description. I can't take any more of him. Y'all know I've reached my max with him and I'm gonna go make some nachos. This was he's so painful. And it's gonna get to the point where the judge I think the prosecution's gonna yell, "He needs to shut his mouth." Like I think the prosecution yells like for him to like shut his mouth or something. Like, "Judge, get him to shut his mouth," or like because he just defied the judge's order. He would like talk over stuff. And so like I need to self-care. I need to go eat some nachos. Like I need to go find my joy because that was eerie. Like that's just to hear somebody just talk so just calm and like to just talk like that. So y'all know I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm not forensic. So I don't work with schmurderers and like this isn't what I do. I enjoy watching it, but I like doing this part for fun. But I have reached my limit for him. I'm gonna go do a little bit of nacho therapy, and I might be back. So depending on what happens and later in court today, if there's nothing major, then I'll just save it all for Saturday. If there's something major that happens, then I'll schedule a video. Y'all will get the notification, and I will see y'all next time. I hope y'all have a good one. Y'all are the best. Bye.